Tamers, Sergio back in Dame. And we close out this week of BT21 deck list highlights with the deck that I was most forward to making from the format. And that being the new Liber Dragonkin deck, focusing on the new Medusamon line from Digimon Liberator. Well, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share this around to help with the algorithm. And without further ado, let's rack into it. And starting off, going over the egg deck, we end up running full playset of the new BT21 Liber Digimon deck, as it's pretty much the main enabler for the deck's insane aggro plays, since it grants the inheritable whenever the stack sees imposing security get removed. It allows one of your Digimon to digivolve up into a reptile or dragonkin trait from hand without reduced cost of 1. With the timing on this pretty much being equivalent to the BT14 Koro, which when that sees, before entering battle, it sees the security being removed to then trigger draw 1. With this pretty much working in the same sense, as you can practically just make your the Digimon swinging in to security stronger before it encounters battle. Though, obviously, for this one, it definitely gets outsped by security effects going off. Thus, you tend to get, outsped in that regard. That's it for the eggs. Now on to rookie lineup, which for me, the core ends up being a full playset of Medusamon and playset of Agumon as the main core, with Medusamon being, the typical Liberator archetypal searcher, grabbing a reptile dragonkin, in addition to one Liberator archetype. As well, it has the similar inheritable to the Digimon, that whenever it sees opposing security removed, you get to gain 1 memory. Well, I'll go on here is a recursion piece, since on play, allows you to recover a reptile dragonkin from trash to hand, while granting the your turn's inheritable of plus 2000 DP to the stack. And to round off rookie lineup, I decided to go along with 2 copies of Guilmon, as well. It ends up being a game closer, as it synergizes well with one of the later stages of the deck, and is more so, again, a game ender, because, again, once it comes down, if it sees the board, sees both the total trash on both sides at 20 or more, it gains Rush, allowing it to, most of the time, end game from there. Though, if you were to draw into it, you still get you don't get to deal with the 1-cost evolution, since it gets to digivolve over a Digimon name for free. Well, that's it for the rookie lineup and how I built it. Alternatively, though, you can choose to bring in, say, the likes of Ukomon and the EX3 Sunoriza as searching tech picks, with Uko still being useful in its own sense, coming out from raising, to then top deck 3 to add Digimon Tamer, and then Sunoriza here being able to top deck 3 on attack, to then add anything with the dragon, specifically anything with dragon in its traits from among them, and then bot teching the rest, with both triggering off, being good, sacrificial rookies to swing into security, to then allow the main stack Digivolution, since, once again, to bring up the Digimon interval doesn't specify that the stack itself has to digivolve up. thus allowing you to just throw these sacrificial rookies into security to hope that they end up getting taken out, since either way, you get to benefit with the other stack on digivolving up into it. Heck, even with Sunriza's case, it's able to ensure the climb. And then from there, for other use, definitely people have been putting up the idea of the structure deck Guilmon as a means mostly for the inherit, since its your turns effect doesn't really get to go off for the build. But you still get to, well, pretty much get the draw 1 whenever a Digimon, opposing Digimon gets deleted, which helps for long term for the stack surviving. Then other options for the more meta side, throwing in a floodgate with the likes of Solarmon here, the structure deck to prevent play cost reductions. Though for other floodgate that's within our type, they don't really have it on hand. There is the BT. There is the likes of BT21 Gaussmon, which, for its own effect, grants a buff to all Gaussmon names plus 3000 DP, and is a floodgate against Digivolution reduction. Though it's again play as you will for that option. And well, that's it for the rookie lineup. Now on to champions. Which, starting off for the main core, it ends up being full playset of Medusamon's champion, Medusamon, as the main core to play off of, as Medusamon allows you to cheat out your own Dreadnoughts from hand while paying their cost, as well as also granting another gain 1 memory whenever opposing security gets removed. And then for here is pretty much all flex spots depending on how you want to attack. And for my build, I definitely decided to go around with the, well, Legend Arms package for the deck, since it ends up playing into other, well, connects into other strategies. Hence why I run 4 copies of EX6 Zuba Eagermon, as, well, has the ability to slot in underneath any of your level 4s to then grant them a additional DP boost of plus 4000 on top of its own your turn's effect of 2 plus 2000 on your turn, as well as pretty much granting its whole stack raid and piercing whenever it gets equipped by, well, whenever it gets equipped, in this case given the package. And then from there, to round off my lucky run-up and my champion lineup, I run the one copy of BT21 Cyclomon, as more so a even more flex spot as is, since it's a Digimon that has a security effect to play itself out after battle, and then being able to trigger its on play in one Digivolving effect to delete a Digimon with 4000 EP or less, which plays into, well, again, a further strategy down the line with what this deck does, and has another DP boosting inheritable to make your, well, to make your swings even more powerful and ensuring the stack survives. Then for tech picks, if you want to go full bar into aggro, there is definitely room to throw in good old BT structure deck Greymon just for its Sec plus 1 inheritable. Then also there's also argument to throw in EX8 Teramon as another security Digimon that comes out to then, well, start off with a very good bruiser of a base, since during your turn or whenever you evolve into it, actually not really, since you don't really get to make use of the the evolution reduction off of Gigi, but you can make use of it as a free body off of security effect that self-buffs at the start of your main with the additional plus 3000 and also another DP boosting inheritable. And from there, you also can choose to, throw in, for my preference of the hybrids, the new, BT18 Grumblmon as another hybrid for game in the deck, since it ends up coming out over any red Tamers that you play for champion cost, and on Digivolve gets to pop a Floodgate, or the other special thing that this deck can do. But that'd be telling, so I'll probably be keeping that for later. And also if you build a stack over it, you get to then on attack also be able to delete any 3000 DP or less Digimon on board. And that's it for champion lineup. Now on to level 5s. Which is pretty much where most of your vision comes from. Since with this lineup definitely being my interpretation of different strategies I've come across the way towards building the deck. Since the core ends up being full playset of Lamiamon and 2 copies of EX6 Duramon to round off the Legend Arms package, since both cards work hand in hand with each other. Since again, with Lamiamon here being the main touchpoint, as Lamiamon has the progress effect, so whenever it swings, it is practically unaffected by your opponent's effects, that may affect this Digimon specifically, thus allowing it to safely swing into security options without having to deal with them until the end of the attack, and also having the neat effect on whenever it sees any reptile dragon kid Digimon have their attacks become redirected, you get to burn 1 security, which segues into the reason why I run the Legend Arms package for the deck. Since you have Duramon here be pretty much the crux, for that effect to pretty much also burn even further, as well as being able to enable other aggro avenues, since for Duramon's equip effect, it gets to grant, for a cost of 2, grant your level 5 or Legend Arms Sec +1, and also grants the stack Raid and Piercing if it gets equipped with a Legend Arms. Also elevating the nifty Herald that syncs up with it, being able to burn away security whenever an attack target gets switched, hence why the emphasis on the Legend Arms package, as you gain Raid to then be able to not rely on opponent having a blocker on board to trigger such effects. And then from there, we also have Lamia's Inheritable that also enables some other plays for the deck. Since Lamia's alterns, whenever it sees a opponent's security removed, it allows you to cheat out a Reptile Dragonkin that's 5000 DP or less to be played out from hand. And to round out the level 5 lineup, I run the 1 copy of excuse me again. Run the 1 copy of BT20 Paildra as another tech option that I've seen float around for this deck. Since, you aren't really going to be DNA digivolving into it, but the 4 cost evolution is pretty reasonable to work off of, since you tend to make use of it almost immediately as on Digivolve, and on play really, you get to grant one of your Digimon piercing, and an extra 4000 DP, and then allowing this Digimon to attack, which, most part, will always be itself to grant itself piercing and the extra DP, since it'll immediately then swing and then trigger off Gigi, and thus allowing you to then chain into that swing, since it would then immediately, check once, then evolve, and then Sec +1 would then be applied to the evolution, allowing you to check once more after the battle. Though, once again, you are swinging in unprotected, so without progress in mind, you are prone to ace plays to then get in your way. Though, once again, that then leaves into our level 6s. First off though, for tech picks, I've definitely come across some myriad other options lying around. Well, in archetype-wise and highlight-wise, there's the new BT21 Cybertron, which counts as Dragonkin, and has the nifty on plan 1 Digivolving effect. While your opponent sits at 5 or fewer security, it forces them to place 1 card from hand to bottom security to then trash top of their security, thus triggering Digimon as well. Though, for other options, definitely having in mind the BT21 Arrestramon Superior mode as another cheeky stealth option that I've come across from BT21. Since it's a raid piercing body as well, Grant is raid piercing as a body, also tends to Digivolve for 4 as the, recourse for its addition, but its 1 Digivolving effect allows it to attack without suspending, which makes way for some other nifty plays or sub down the line to prevent it from some clapback from having the stack being run over. Also having the Alternates effect to buff itself up for each card in its evolution source, thus making it a more survivable swing. In addition, when you go consider the Dex Gigimon, both grant on evolve your turn's DP boost, with Cybertron being pretty much the highest so far in the deck. Then for my own original idea, you couldn't go wrong pitching in a ace in the deck, with the one that I had in mind being Wargrel Ace from BT19. Since it's on play 1 Digivolving effect, allows it to delete 3000 DP total worth of opposing Digimon. And for each opposing Digimon, that threshold increases by 2000. And then if it doesn't manage to delete anything, you get to delete 1, that's actually the wrong interpretation, as for each Digimon this effect deletes, you'll do gain back 1. Pretty much devastating the opponent's board and stealing back turn. It's all having the nifty inheritable to add an additional 3000 to the DP deletion thresholds on your effects. And that's it for level 5 lineup. Now on to the main highlight of the deck, being the level 6. Starting off with the main boss of the deck, that being the, Gorgon herself, Medusamon, being another progress body, and having Sec +1, with the on Digivolving effect to optionally delete a opposing Digimon with the lowest DP on board, which also can lay over into your as the end of attack, since once again we play into Gigimon. Thus lands into the Alternates effect that this deck is based around, as All turns, whenever this Digimon sees opposing Digimon or security stack, Digimon deleted or security stack removed, it spawns out a petrification token, with which ends up adding to the deck's aggro, as that petrification token ends up being a pretty much dead body that can't suspend on the opponent's turn, and also has the on delete effect to to burn their security. Thus, pretty much playing into the deck's ability to be aggro heavy, since on that swing into Medusa preferably, you pretty much check for heavy damage, especially with how I built it. Since you then pretty much spawn out a petrification token, and if it's the lowest body on board, you get to pop it at the end of the air attack. Then, to further add on to the deck aggro, I throw in one copy of Medieval Gallant, EX8, Medieval Gallant, given how much of a powerful card it is for the deck. Obviously, its Vortex and Lance is well added to the aggro. As well, you actually can make use of the token on the opponent's side, since it's a free Digimon that is which can't suspend only on the opponent's turn. Thus, if you keep turn with petrification token on the opponent's side, it's viable to be a suspended down target for Medieval Gallant's reduced cost. Thus, allowing you to then vortex into it and, pretty much go in on another burn security. And then also, with its most claim to fame, where its all turns effect to then trigger off its one Digivolving effect and proceed to be a terror for the opponent. Then, rounding off level 6s, I run one copy of new BT21 Wargrey, since it definitely has its own potential for the deck. Being able to, 1, reduce its own play cost by 2 for each Digimon on the opponent's side, and being a native rush, raid, and blocker body, that all turns, whenever it sees opposing Digimon deleted, gets to unsuspend itself, thus adding to both offense and defense of the deck. Then from there, going into tech options, I've definitely been seeing around, throwing in the option on putting in X4's Victory Gray, since it ends up being a deletion monster for the deck. Since on Digivolve, deletes opposing Digimon with 6,000 ZP or less, and adds plus an extra 2,000 to the threshold for every opposing Digimon on board. And then all turns, whenever it sees opposing Digimon get deleted, while you have a Tamer in play, you get to delete their highest DP as well. Thus, in the long run, with Victory Gray remaining on board, since, once again, that Tamer condition is not that hard to fulfill as well, you're able to constantly control board as well. Then from there, continuing on with the Greymon adjacent stuff, we also have the new promo Gaimon to put into consideration. All the pretty steep 5 cost evolution, you have yourself a raid blocker body that on Digivolve taunts opposing Digimon, as well as being able to attack, thus allowing you to attack in and then be able to reboot and block the body you taunted. Since that then plays into the Alterns effect to then burn away the top security whenever attack targets change. And then for my own original sauce option, there's also the likes of Dynamon, which is searchable because of the Liberator trait, which also, unfortunately, does have the stipulation of that steep 5 cost evolution, since there aren't really any nicer traits in here. But it's a sec +1 body with fortitude, allowing it to be pretty sticky, with this claim to fame, being able to, on play one Digivolve, suspend down one Digimon to then delete one opposing suspended Digimon below DP, and floodgating your opponent from attacking directly by forcing your opponent to attack into your suspended Digimon while itself is suspended. And that's it for level 6s. Now on to level 7, which, in this case, is the singular copy of OmniX that I threw in here. And well, it ends up being quite useful in and of itself, since, well, it's another big beefy body on board that can definitely benefit from all the inherits you give, since they're all pretty much generic, being a raid, piercing, and blocker body, that for the most part you just play for the end of turn effect to allow my Digimon rush and being able to attack without suspending. This definitely also being a game ender for the deck, since you pretty much chip down your opponent down to 0 security and drop OmniX on Evolve to then use its end turn to then go for game. Though for tech options, definitely seeing an argument to throw in Agumon Ace into the mix, since it's able to, well, first off, Digivolve over Agumon while you're seeing at 2 of your security, or any of your low 6s in that matter, to then on play, on evolve, delete up to a total's worth of this Digimon's DP, imposing Digimon, and then on attack also be able to burn away security as long as you have Tamer on board. Which again, to preface, is not that hard to do, especially because of Medusamon establishing your Owens pretty easily. Well, that's it for the Digimon lineup. Now on to Tamers, which, in my case, I ended up going all full Owen lineup, being a 2-4 split between BT18 Owen and BT21 in the new BT21 Owen. Since, well, BT18 Owen is the memory tamer for the deck, and is able to have the Altern's effect, be able to pop anything that's 4,000 DP or less on the opponent's side whenever your opponent's security gets removed, thus giving you another avenue to get rid of your token, your opposing, well, the token sitting on the opposing side. Well, BT21 Owen is the main tamer you'd want to establish early, being the usual passive memory gain tamer, and then having the end of turn effect to suspend himself down, and grant one of your Digimon with the reptile or dragon trait, piercing, and the ability to attack, thus allowing you to, well, pass turn after building up the stack, and allowing that stack to attack, or possibly run over something and pierce through, and then triggering all of the effects, leading into, well, chaining into Gigimon's main playstyle. That's it for Tamers, my build. Though, obviously, another thing you could put in to further put on the aggro is the BT1 Taikamiya, who's a memory star, and grants all red Digimon that are sitting at 4 or more sources, sec +1, to then further aggro with more security checks. And that's it for the Tamer lineup. Now on to options, which for me, utility-wise, I'm going for a 3-2 split between offense training and red moon boost and red scramble, since again, this deck is very piece reliant and has very few recursions for its off-archetypal pieces. Again, offense training to dig 2 and be a evolution reduction delay, red boost for deeper dig, and +2 memory for the pop, and red scramble to speed up tempo and be able to recur a piece once it goes back to your turn, as well as being able to cheat out a rookie from trash if checked in security. Then to round off options, I go for a 3 copies of the Medusamon option, Raging Serpentine. This being able to, well, being a lot more easier to work with comparably for other liver options, since it's able to reduce its own play cost while your opponent have its own play cost while the opponent sits at 3 or fewer security. With its main effect, deleting the opponent's Digimon with the highest DP, and then establishing itself in the battle area, while granting an all turns delay that triggers when the opponent's security is removed, allows one of your Digimon to Digivolve up into a Reptile or Dragonkin trait, and without paying cost, thus playing into more aggro-heavy play, since you get to chain evolve on swing, especially when, in this case, with Gigimon's interval. As for other tech options, depending on how you build it, you may want to include some of these in case. Definitely in the case of the Cydron example, running a copy of a Delicate Plan seems good in mind in case the opponent chooses to, throw in anything with a security effect, albeit you do tend to see overlap given that you do burn away security in this deck as well to add on to the aggro. To add on the aggro from there, I've definitely seen the very questionable choice of the promo Bind Red Trigger for 3 Musketeers, given that its main effect is to trash opposing security, though you don't really get the second part of its main effect. And optionally, if it comes up, being the security effect to delete one opposing Digimon with the highest DP. To run off tech options, there's lastly Crimson Blaze to counter wide boards, and then also being able to prevent anything your opponent from cheating out any Digimon via effects, as well as being another security bomb for 2 that comes to mind. Though another thing that I'd like to point out is Crimson Blaze is being the one affected by Crimson Blaze. As, when it comes to Crimson Blaze, you definitely are locked out of Lamiamon's Inheritable. However, though, Medusamon's token spawning effect is not a effect by her owner player, as she's the one forcing the opponent to spawn out a petrification token instead, thus not locking you out of petrification tokens being spawned on the opponent's side while you're under Crimson Blaze. Well, that's it for the deck list itself. Now on to combos. Well, before getting into combos, starting off with the mulligan hand. As usual, the main priority is seeing 2 rookies in hand, 1 to establish and back, and preferably Eliza for searching, and then seeing your consistency pieces for sub later and for digging for your pieces, and then just climbing the stack, and the Metro being the preferred one, also seeing it paired with either Owens to establish for it to cheat out. From there, it's just a matter of pretty much climbing the stack, as, for the most part, in case of Lamia and Paildra, you're able to make use of the Plain Jane, since their swing will without doubt trigger Gigian Hairball to then continue the climb. While Duromon here is sort of piece reliant, since your greatest mileage out of it is either equipping it with Raidra, it is Super Eager, or onto Lamia for extra damage. There, definitely seeing your level 6s, preferably Medusa, and then, well, dig the knife even deeper on that main swing. From there, it's just seeing the rest of your bridges, Raging Serpentine definitely being up here as a means to delete towards the middle game, and then enable a free Evo, Scramble to also bridge plays, and lastly Omni-X for Game Ender, while Geel and Cyclone here being definitely the lowest priority, since you want to, well, see Geel draw into as a Game Ender, preferably, and then Cyclone to get the better mileage out of it coming out from security. And, well, now on to the combos. Then starting off for combos, for turn 1 post turn 1 combo, it's definitely along the lines of, well, the main hardline one, definitely being the terms you see, well, end up establishing either searchers, well, preferably offense trading, as you promote out a Agu or Liza, training from raising, and then immediately popping training to then go into the Metro for free. Thus, then the Metro would then be able to cheat on either Owens, though in the case most likely the new BT21 Owen, as we'll be making use of its own effects. Since from there, it's just a matter of climbing up. Case going into Lamia for one instance, the more straightforward version of this combo. Passing turn for 2, and then end of turn, Owen can go off, suspending, and then granting Lamia piercing and the ability to attack. Being a pseudo blitz, thus Lamia would then swing, and with progress active, it's pretty much protected against ace plays. Then proceed to check 1 security, then before a security bell will go off, we'll then be able to Digivolve up into the most preferable case of Medusamon into that swing, since in that timing, Bell will then resume with Medusa at the helm. Then, once it survives that swing, Sec +1 will go off, checking for another security. Then allowing, well, and then within, well, before in between that, you then can go have the Metro and the Liza Hairballs to go off to gain back 1 memory each. And then with that second check, Lamia can go off, and then allowing you to cheat out pretty much any of your 5,000 DP costs, Dragonkin or Reptiles from hand, since that effect only really goes off in that line after the second check off the Sec +1. And from there, before end of attack, triggering Medusa to then spawn out a petrification token on the opponent's side, and then pretty much end of attack after starting the last attack. No, let's check. Trigger Medusa and hitting the lowest DP on your opponent's, getting rid of the lowest DP on the opponent's side, which, depending on the case, will likely be the petrification token. You can spell it up, and in that one turn, you've effectively eaten through 3 security on the opponent's side. Now, if we entering the clock back a bit, instead of Lamia, we go into Paildra, we get ourselves a body that doesn't necessarily need BT21 Owen, but has the ability to attack on its own, since it grants itself plus 8,000 in piercing as well, well, plus 4,000 in piercing, and the ability to swing, being able to run over anything and then pierce through, or simply playing Jane, well, run over security. And within that, and within the same line of thinking, check, and then before battle, go Digivolve into Medusa, and reduce cost 3, and then go and, well, proceed to, well, check security once again, and pretty much battle 3 times, well, do security battle 3 times, and within surviving, again, practically eating up for security by the end of the petrification token getting deleted. Though alternatively, if you don't, going off of Mount instead of the Metro, we go through the Zuba Eager thought process. Since, once again, Zuba Eager, then paying the Piper for the 2 cost of there's equipment to then grant Zubiger the, well, granting raid and piercing for the stack, as well as Dura's own inheritable. And then from there, for most efficient plays, definitely going into Lamiamon as the preferred, though obviously still have Paildra as another alternate route, since it ends up looking more like this, in all honesty. Since Lamia would then come down, passing a 2, Jen Owen spins, granting Lamia piercing to attack, and because it has raid, it's able to run into the opposing Digimon with the highest TP, that's unsuspended, and then thus triggering your turn's effect to then burn away security first, then triggering Gigi, then turning into Medusa to then run over the raid target, and then pierce through, and or optionally, and again, matter of choosing when to trigger one Digivolving / end of attack to pop something, to then, well, burn one off of Lamia, pierce through, and go for 2 checks, or 3 checks, if you want the Paildra route. Well, and backtracking a little, we also have the additional burn from Duramon's inheritable. Plus 2 burns, then 2 checks off of Medusa, Rebel, and then you effectively cleared out security, with Medusa surviving after all those battles and popping the petrification token, thus clearing out the opponent's board quite effectively, the opponent's security. Then for the Paildra route, definitely plays into a little bit more plays, since again, at a level 5 point, Digimon can go underneath either to grant its inheritable to either. Though, obviously, it makes the most sense to give it while the stack is a Zuba, or at the least with Lamion on board. And then alternative play towards a more endgame style, you can make use of Wargrave for its cheap evolution cost to then bridge into more aggro plays, since it can then, it's a swingable body that gets you on suspend and do multiple checks, or simply just make use of it as a means to, well, just bridge into Omni-X for any endgame, since pretty much from there the main idea has pretty much laid out, played in full, as you pretty much create your tools to stall and go for an explosive turn, with Medusa at the helm to pretty much burn security in full. And that's actually it for the deck as is now, though given that this deck is actually part of the main cast, well, for an additional main cast towards the later end of the first arc, there is definitely also something subject to further support down the line. Since the first lay of sort for the deck itself ends up being the upcoming Sword Tourney pack, with the addition of the promo Medusamon, who, just like one of the, who ends up being the opposite sense for Vortex Warriors, meaning the fact that it ends up being the equivalent of Structured Deck Patero, being a security Digimon that cheats out a Liberator when checking security, and is an earlier case of the earliest case of progress for the deck. And then for the Inheritable, it ends up being the standard gain 1 memory whenever the stack sees opposing security stack removed. But overall, that has been my look at the Liberator Dragon or Medusamon deck for the BT21 format. And well, that closes out for this pushed up schedule, as once again I end off. I'll be likely away, likely ahead of EX9 versus Monsters release. So this is just me putting stuff out there, and just putting my opinions out there of decks from BT21 format. And well, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share this around to help with the algorithm and keep up with my videos. And this is Sarja, signing off.